So reading from chapter 9, first text. Title of the chapter, The Most Confidential Knowledge. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam tu te guyatamam Idam tu te guyatamam Pravakshyami anasuyave Pravakshyami anasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva moksha se subha Yajnatva moksha se subha Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam tu te guyatamam Idam tu te guyatamam Pravakshyami anasuyave Pravakshyami anasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva moksha se subha Yajnatva moksha se Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam tu te bhuyatamam Pravakshyami anasuyave Jnanam vijnana sahitam Yajñātva mokṣase subhā Prabhus
Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam tu te bhuyatamam Pravakshami anasuyave Jnanam vijnana sahitam Yajñātva mokṣase shubhā
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam tu te bhuyatamam Pravakshami anasuyave Jnanam vijnana sahitam Yajñātva mokṣase shubhā
Mataji's
Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam tu te guhyatamam Pravakshami anasuyave Jnana vijnana sahitam Yajñātva mokṣase shubhā Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam tu te guhyatamam Pravakshami anasuyave Jnanam vijnana sahitam Yajñātva mokṣase shubhā
Shri Bhagavan Vacha The Supreme Personality of Godhead said Idam this tu but te unto you Guhyatamam the most confidential Pravakshyami I am speaking Anasuyave to the non-envious Jnanam knowledge Vijnana realized knowledge Sahitam with yet which Jnātva knowing Mokṣase you will be released Ashubha from this miserable material existence. Please repeat the translation. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Please hear the purport. As the devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed amongst devotees. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and gives him the intelligence to understand the signs of Krishna in the association of devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter matters more confidential than any he has already disclosed. The very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book. And in the second and third chapters, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. Topics discussed in the 7th and 8th chapters are specifically related to devotional service. And because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness, they are called more confidential. But the matters which are described in the 9th chapter deal with unalloyed, pure devotion. Therefore, this is called the most confidential. One who is situated in the most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He therefore has no material pangs, although he is in the material world. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said that although one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Supreme Lord is situated in the conditional state of material existence, he is to be considered liberated. Similarly, we shall find it in the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter that anyone who is engaged in that way is a liberated person. Now this first verse has specific significance. The words idam jnanam, this knowledge, refer to pure devotional service, which consists of 9 different activities: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, praying, obeying, maintaining friendship, and surrendering everything. By the practice of these 9 elements of devotional service, one is elevated to spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness. When one's heart is thus cleared of material contamination, one can understand the signs of Krishna. Simply to understand that the living entity is not material is not such. That may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but one should recognize the difference between activities of the body and the spiritual activities of one who understands that he is not the body. In the 7th chapter, we have already discussed the opulent potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his different energies, the inferior and superior natures, and all this material manifestation. Now in chapter 9, the glories of the Lord will be delineated. The Sanskrit word anasuyare in this verse is also very significant. Generally, the commentators, even if they are highly scholarly, are all envious of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately. Because they are envious of Krishna, their commentaries are useless. The commentaries given by devotees of the Lord are bona fide. No one can explain Bhagavad Gita or give perfect knowledge of Krishna if he is envious. One who criticizes the character of Krishna without knowing him is a fool. So such commentaries should be very carefully avoided. For one who understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the pure and transcendental personality, these chapters will be very beneficial. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, transcendental purpose of Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Ramjana Dhiranasya, Yamachana Shalakaya, Shakshurumilitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Shri Chaitanya Namo Sthapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Vadamayam, Vedati Swapadantikam, Vandeham Shri Guru, Shri Prabhadamanam, Shri Guru Vaishnavasya, Shri Rupa Sarvajatam, Savana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam, Sadvaitam Sadhutam, Parishad Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Shri Radha Krishna Bhadam, Savana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Deenabandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute, Tapta Kanchana Gaurange, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Haripe, Namo Mahadanyaya, Krishna Prema Dharayate, Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya, Namne Hori Krishna Namaha, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, most confidential knowledge. And there are various levels of confidential knowledge in Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, as Prabhupada says in the purport, in the beginning, we are being introduced to Krishna in spiritual life. And so that part of the first few chapters are known as Guhya. They are confidential. And then between 6, 7, 8, you'll find that Srila Prabhupada says that the knowledge given there becomes a little bit more confidential. So in Sanskrit it is Guhya, and then the next more confidential is Guhyatara. And this chapter is the essence of the entire Bhagavad Gita as far as transmitting of knowledge is concerned. And therefore this chapter is known as Guhyatamam. Tamam means the most confidential knowledge. So that is why this chapter is considered very important, because it is right in the middle. It is the defining chapter that gives us the idea of what is considered the most confidential and the most important knowledge. Sometimes when we say something is most confidential, what do we mean by that? When you say this is very confidential, what you generally mean is that it is secret, right? But you know, in material world, when you say, "Oh, this is very confidential, not to be spoken to others," you know it will be spoken to others, isn't it? Because we like it. When we hear something is very confidential, we are all ears. In material world, it's like that, right? Because we have this tendency to gossip, we have the tendency to find out secrets. We love secrets, you know, not because we can keep it, but because we want to speak about it. Then what happens is, if someone comes to you and tells you this is very confidential, we are all ears. But when we tell someone, Prabhu, chapter 9 is very confidential, okay, fine. You know? So that should not be the way. The most confidential knowledge here means that which is most precious. Confidential is also considered to be something that can be understood with maturity. Sometimes when something is spoken in confidence, it means the person who's speaking it to you has also the confidence in you that you will accept that knowledge. That is why it is confidential. It is coming from the word confidence. So when Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, this knowledge is secret because not everyone can understand that devotional service is the essence of spiritual life. Not everyone can. In this world, for example, we are all searching for Krishna in different ways. But very often, we are more attracted to so many other paths, except the path of devotional service. Most people will tell us that devotional service is a sentimental activity, and therefore, there is no knowledge required in devotional service. And yet, in the 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita, which is the essence of all knowledge, the most important point that comes through is actually to surrender to Krishna in devotion. That is the whole point of the Gita. So when we speak about something in confidential knowledge as spoken by Krishna, it also not only means something which is not understood well unless it is transmitted in the proper way. That is the essence of confidential knowledge. Confidential knowledge must be given by a bona fide source. Very important. If someone does not understand the value of the knowledge, then that person cannot transmit its value. Isn't it true? If you understand something to be valuable, then you can transmit that value to the next person. If you consider someone extremely important, you will make an introduction in such a way that the other person will feel this person is important. Therefore, when we are going to transmit confidential knowledge, we must first be convinced that this knowledge is valuable. When we are convinced it is valuable, then we can transmit it. And being convinced it is valuable is not enough. If we are really convinced knowledge is confidential and valuable, then we will act on that knowledge. Because only when you act on something which is valuable, can you understand and experience its value. Otherwise, you will not understand its value. So that's why the word confidential is very important. Confidential also means it is not easily understood if it is not transmitted properly. Very important. That is why this is the most confidential knowledge. Now the second point that comes across in this verse is that if we are equipped with this confidential knowledge, then this confidential knowledge has one great capacity. it will allow us to transcend this material nature. Even while, Prabhupada writes in the purport, even while we are in a material state of existence. That means we do not have to wait until we die to become transcendental. This transcendental knowledge allows us to become situated in transcendental consciousness, even while we are alive in this material world. And you all know that this material world is a difficult place to be transcendental. Because by nature, it is Dukhalayam and it is Ashashvatam. Alayam means a place, isn't it? Duk means a place of misery, right? Himalayam. Hima means ice. Alayam means place of ice, isn't it? So Dukhalayam means a place of misery. So how to become liberated in a place of misery is almost impossible. But Krishna tells us here that if one takes up this transcendental knowledge, then it will liberate our consciousness. In the purport is so nicely stated, it will liberate our consciousness. And that is an important point. Otherwise, it is very difficult to come out of this world. In fact, this world is so difficult. If you read Bhagavatam in 11.249 of Srimad Bhagavatam, how difficult it is to become liberated from this material world, even while living in this material world, is given in this shloka. In this shloka, it is nicely stated, Dehendriya prana manodiyamyo janma peyakshut bhayatarsha kriche samsara dharme avimuyamanaha smritya hare bhagavata pradhanaha. This is a very nice verse, very practical verse. This is the verse that tells us what transcendental confidential knowledge is. In this world, our material desires are such that our bodies are always subject to birth and death. No one can escape once you're born. You must die. It's only a question of when. But before death comes, there is decay. You see the word there? It is not death. In this shloka, the word decay is used. Because even before death comes, decay is the cousin of death. And decay sets in very quickly. You will notice as you're growing old that your body is decaying. It is deteriorating, right? Whatever you were 10 years ago, you're not now. No one says, as I'm growing older, my knees are getting better. No one says, as I grow older, my hair is getting bigger. No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So there is decay. Then this life air prana is subjected to always the harassment of hunger and thirst. Isn't it true that most of us live basically according to I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. Isn't it true? We don't want to admit it, but every few hours we are hungry. Every few hours we are thirsty. In fact, more than a few hours we are thirsty. If we finish this program and there's no prasadam, you will not be very happy. Especially on Ekadashi. Isn't it? On Ekadashi, our attendance always goes up. Maybe because we want to hear Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, but also because Ekadashi Prasad is not so easy, isn't it? So, hunger and thirst are always the challenge of our life. And because of this, Bhagavatam says, the mind is always anxious. Even if the mind wants to be peaceful, it's always anxious. And even if you tell your mind, listen, there's nothing to be anxious about, then you become anxious because you're not anxious. Sometimes we're like that. If you tell someone there is no problem, they are anxious. How can there not be problem? It is true. Many of us are so conditioned that way. And finally, the mind is always anxious, and intelligence runs after that which cannot be obtained. Isn't it true? Sometimes we run after that dream that can never be obtained. And for the whole life, we are wasting our time doing that. And instead of coming to Krishna, we are just losing our time. And when all this happens, Bhagavatam says, Krikshay. Krikshay means our senses become completely exhausted. That's why by old age, we are very tired. Sometimes people say, why are we tired at old age? You're tired because for whole life you have been chasing after your senses, and your senses have been chasing after things. But Bhagavatam tells us that one who is remembering Krishna, in other words, when we receive this confidential knowledge that devotional service should be practiced, then we will remember Krishna. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. And for such a person, even though they are living in this world, they are aloof from it. They are not touched. Because Smritya Harihe, their mind is always remembering Hari, and therefore they become Bhagavata Pradhana. They become very peaceful, and they become the foremost devotees of the Lord. So, chapter 9 will prove 11 to 49. This is a very important point. Chapter 9 will provide the evidence that the confidential knowledge that we have in chapter 9 will take us out of this situation. It's very important. Now, this knowledge that Arjuna is going to hear from Krishna, it is very importantly stated, this knowledge is devotional service. It is in the purport. Do not be mistaken to think that when we hear about Krishna, then after hearing, we must then perform devotional service. No. The moment you are hearing from Krishna, that is devotional service. Please remember that. Very often, people will tell you that devotional service is a sentimental activity. It has nothing to do with the study of the Gita. But please remember that the moment you start imbibing any knowledge of Krishna, that imbibing by hearing, by speaking, by remembering, by surrendering, by serving, by maintaining friendship with Krishna, by prayers, by worship, all of these activities are devotional service. And they are non-different from confidential knowledge. Sometimes people say that the Jnana Yogi is one who understands who Krishna is. But that is not true. Because transcendental knowledge is the highest form available to remember Krishna. And that is why the whole Bhagavad Gita is speaking about bhakti. You will never see the word transcendental knowledge being used for Jnana Yoga. You will never see it. Because Jnana Yoga is receiving knowledge on a mental or at the very most on a philosophical level. But when you receive knowledge on a transcendental level, that knowledge is non-different from devotional service. This is a mistake many devotees make. But please, you must verify this when you speak to others, because they also make the same mistake. Prabhupada makes it very clear in just one line that devotional service in the purport, pure devotional service means the 9 limbs of devotional service. Transcendental knowledge means the 9 limbs of devotional service. Prabhupada is very clear. And that's why this knowledge that Arjuna is about to be hearing from Krishna is confidential. Because it is Vijnana. You see in the translation there's Jnana and then Vijnana. Knowledge is there. As long as knowledge remains theoretical, it is Jnana. But the moment knowledge is acted on, it becomes Vijnana. Vijnana means to realize, to practice. And realization means that something becomes real to you. That's why there's the word realization. When something becomes real for you, it means you're putting into practice what you have heard. Right? Now supposing you want to drive. So you go to driving school. Before that, you take your theory. Theory tells you press the middle pedal, brake pedal. Press the right, it's your accelerator. Nowadays, it's all automatic cars, so there's no clutch pedal. But nowadays, there was also a left pedal. Now, after you've studied it in theory, that is jnana. That's good. But now you have to drive. So when you put that into action and you sit in the car for the first time, you start the car and you press the pedal with your right leg, knowing that that is the pedal in your what you have heard or what you've read, that is the pedal that is supposed to make you accelerate. It has become Vijnana. That has become Vijnana. Because you have practiced it. And because you practiced it, you've made it real. You see the difference? So, until you start chanting Krishna's names, until you actually start hearing about Krishna, then this knowledge of Krishna still remains just knowledge. But the real test is when you become actively involved in the practice. That's why we request all devotees that really transcendental knowledge is practice knowledge. Otherwise, you and I can speak and philosophize until the cows come home. But we never chant, we don't read, we don't do enough. Then the transcendental knowledge is missing. You see the point? So this is a very important point that we must accept. And therefore, Prabhupada says in the lecture on 9.1, Prabhupada says, when Arjuna heard what Krishna spoke, Arjuna did not only speak, right, or hear, he actually took it into his heart and he accepted it as matam. Matam means injunction. Very important. Matam means injunction. You know, and when Prabhupada says when something is an injunction, it means it's already settled. And Prabhupada gives the example of how Parliament debates over law. And after debating over law, they legislate it. And after legislation, what do? They actually pass it. No one can come forward and say, oh, maybe we should debate it again. It's a done deal. It's a done deal. It's law. And you have to accept it. And if you don't accept what Krishna gives you, then there are always consequences to it. That's it. So in that sense, it is very simple. What is given by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is the law for us to follow and to practice. That is why confidential knowledge is very important, right? And that is why in this case, it is most confidential knowledge. Now, when you look at the first line of Bhagavad Gita here, in this verse, idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshyami anasuyave. Now, this word pravakshami is also very important. Because pravakshami means, Arjuna, I shall speak to you now. But this speaking is not just simple speaking. Prabhupada says it is to impart. Krishna is giving instructions now to Arjuna. And the word, right, when you say pravakshami, vaksha means I will speak. And the word pra actually means that I will give you specific details, instructions. That's why pravakshami means I will give you specifically, exactly how you should act. So it is not just general speaking that Krishna is having with Arjuna. Arjuna has been told by Krishna, and he's giving now the specific medicine to relieve him of his anxiety. That's why Prabhu's Mataji's, this process of devotional service is very specific. It is not a general thing that we take it and we learn something about it. No. To the extent that you follow it strictly, to that extent it works. For example, if you take antibiotics, you have to complete the course. You can't say, I'll take 4, I feel a little bit better, stop. You have to take the course, right? If you go to study something, you have to study it specifically. You can't decide, I will do what I want. If you want to decide, I do what I want, then the confidential knowledge is not revealed to you. Sometimes what happens is, we want to worship Jagannath in a certain way. Yes, that is good, but Jagannath has given a certain way to worship him in Sanskrit. We can't say, Jagannath, I just love you and I will just worship you whatever way I want. That means you may receive some mercy, but you are not receiving the full mercy because you're not following exactly what he has told you to do. You want to do things the way you want to do. You follow? There's a difference. So, ye yatha mam prapadyante, to the extent that you follow exactly what is given by Krishna, to that extent you will reap the true essence of confidential knowledge. This is very important. And why is that being brought up here? Because very often we want to accept what suits us. And then the things that doesn't suit us, we don't want to accept. And why is that? Because we don't accept Krishna's authority in full. And why is it that we don't accept Krishna's authority in full? Because Srila Prabhupada and our Sastras say, because actually, anasuyave, we are envious of Krishna. Do you notice something that Prabhupada, that Arjuna states here that's very important? When Arjuna is speaking, when Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, Krishna tells Arjuna why I'm explaining this to you. I'm explaining this to you because you are never envious of me. Never envious of me. That is why our Sastras tell us envy is the greatest impediment to God realization. Please remember that. Envy is the greatest impediment. And this is very important because in Bhagavatam, if you recall, in the first chapter, Krishna actually was speaking to Arjuna as a friend. And Arjuna was speaking to Krishna as a friend actually. He was speaking as if they were equals. But when he saw how disturbed and deluded he had become and how confused he had become, what did he do? He turned around to see Krishna and immediately, I think it's in 2.7 of Bhagavad Gita, in 2.7, he says, Asadimam Prapannam. He accepts that Krishna, now I have become confused. Now I have become deluded. Now I've lost my composure. And therefore, I am now surrendering to you. Right? And when he says that to Krishna, that is the turning point for Arjuna. Because that is the point Srila Prabhupada tells us that Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. Prapannam, Sharanam. He surrenders to Krishna. And he surrenders to Krishna, and this is a very difficult thing to do. How many of us can actually be with a friend, and when we are in difficulty, we actually turn to our friend and we elevate the friend's status such that we say, please guide me now, because I accept that you know better than me. It takes humility, it takes courage, and it takes strength of character. And you need all these three to be away from envy. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us, especially if we think we are equals. So therefore, Arjuna has qualified himself to hear Bhagavad Gita. Because in Bhagavad Gita itself, he proved in 2.7 of Bhagavad Gita what a great devotee he is. By immediately turning to Krishna and saying, Krishna, you may be my friend, but today I am now your surrendered soul. I am your disciple. You please help me, Krishna, and help me to understand. He did not say, no, I know what you're going to say. It's okay. I'll recite Bhagavad Gita to you now. He didn't do that. He could have done that. No, I know all this. Sometimes we do that. When we talk to friends, yeah, I hear you, but we don't change. Because actually we don't hear. And the reason why we don't hear is because actually in our hearts we are envious of someone. We are envious of someone when somebody is actually better at something than us. And it's a very twisted way of thinking someone is better. Because it doesn't help us actually. Instead of meaning well for someone, we actually don't mean well for them. And that is envy. It is stated by Srila Prabhupada that we all came into this world because we're envious of Krishna. And sometimes, I hear devotees saying, Prabhupada, I may be envious of another devotee, but I'm definitely not envious of Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada says, how do we know if you're not envious of Krishna? Prabhupada says, we will know you're not envious of Krishna if you follow exactly what Krishna has said in Bhagavad Gita. If you follow all his instructions, that actually means that you're not envious. Think about it. To the extent that you follow the instructions of the Lord and your spiritual master, to that extent you're not envious of them. But if you don't follow Krishna's instructions, then actually we are envious. If we cannot follow Krishna's instruction because we are trying, but we are not capable of, that is different. But sometimes we don't even want to try, because we don't even have faith in the instructions of Krishna. You see the difference, right? In 3.31 of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes this very clear. Ye me matamidam nityam anutishtanti manavaha shraddhavanto anasuyanto muchanti tepi karmavihi. This is such a seminal verse in the Gita. And look at what Krishna says. Krishna says, those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions. Mata means injunctions. That means whatever you do, if you do it according to what Krishna wants, and who follow this teaching faithfully, Shraddha, and Anasuyanto, without envy. See, the word envy comes up here. Then what happens to them? They become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the same point. In our purport today, Prabhupada says that you can become liberated from material living, even while living in this world, if you take up transcendental knowledge and practice it. And that's the same thing that's being said by Krishna in 3.31. See how important it is. And you look at the purport. Prabhupada says in 3.31, One should have firm faith in this injunction without envying the Lord. And now Prabhupada brings up in this purport what he says in the last paragraph of today's purport. He says there are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad Gita, but they have no faith in Krishna. Therefore, because they have no faith in Krishna, they are actually envious of Krishna. Sometimes I have met so many scholars who have read so many different versions of Bhagavad Gita, but they come and tell us that they are confused, they cannot understand what the Gita is. It's not really their fault. It's the fault of those who have commented on the Gita. They have made the Gita so confusing. First of all, the Gita is spoken by Krishna. If Krishna spoke the Gita and says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhu, I am the source of all things which are material and spiritual, then why do we have to say, actually when Krishna says, I am the source, what he means is, the I is not Krishna. The I is the spirit in Krishna. That is really confusing things. That's really messing with things. Someone says, I am your father. You turn around and say, no, no, no. Actually, what you mean is, the person in you is my father. What in the world does that mean? Even the father will become confused. So therefore, don't complicate the Gita. And Srila Prabhupada has made the Gita as it is. If you read Srila Prabhupada's Gita, even a child can understand it. These children sitting here, they are very young, right? But they can understand the Gita. They can understand it. If you ask them who is Krishna, they will tell you Supreme Personality of Godhead. They will tell you that. And the scholars cannot say that. So who has accepted this transcendental knowledge? They have. Why? Are they envious of Krishna? No. Are they challenging Krishna? No. Do they think, no, actually I know better than Krishna? No. If Krishna says do this, they will do it. They will not say why, what is the problem, why not this, why not that, because they have faith. You see, childlike simplicity is really the key to understanding transcendental knowledge. But Prabhupada writes in the end of this purport very nicely, because some people will say, if I cannot understand Krishna, if I cannot follow what Krishna gives me, therefore does it mean I'm envious? Prabhupada encourages us. In the last part of this purport, he says so nicely, he says that, but an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. Isn't this the most encouraging line that you can read? It tells us that as long as we are not envious of Krishna, but we have faith in Krishna, and we are trying, we are not resentful of what Krishna is giving us. Sometimes we find it very difficult to accept a situation. Supposing something happens in a way we don't plan. A devotee will see the hand of Krishna in it. But the materialists will not see the hand of Krishna. They will become frustrated, angry, upset. And when that happens, right, they become defeated. They feel hopeless. But the devotee doesn't feel it. There may be so many reverses in our lives, but we never feel hopeless. We always feel hopeful. There's always a chance things will become better. There's a reason why Krishna did not allow me to do something. There's a reason why I can't perform something in a certain way. I'm chanting, but even though I'm chanting, I'm having so many problems in life. It doesn't mean when I chant, everything must become better. No. So a devotee is not defeated, you see. This is the mood of Arjuna. And that is why Krishna is now speaking confidential, most confidential knowledge to Arjuna. Because he's not envious. Now you see the point of envy. Now we must understand that envy from a spiritual point of view is very much deeper than the idea of envy from a material point of view. And what happens when we are envious of Krishna? What happens if we are envious of each other? Someone's doing nice cooking. And I think, oh, okay, fine. My cooking is also good, but the other person is better. Everybody is saying, Prabhu, you're a better cook, or you're the best cook. And I'm standing next to that person and I can't take it. I'm obviously envious. What happens when that happens? 332 tells us that. Krishna is very clear. He tells you what happens when you're not envious, but he also tells you what happens when you have envy. And see this. But those who, out of envy, disregard these teachings. Therefore, if you disregard the teachings of Krishna because you want to do whatever the world you want to do, and because you're envious of him, then three things would happen. You will be bereft of all knowledge. This most confidential knowledge will not be open to us. You may read it. You can read 9 chapters 100 times. But it doesn't mean it is revealed to you. It is just theoretical. Second, you become befooled. Befooled means you will think something that you're doing is correct, but actually what you're doing is foolish. And you're befooled. The world can see that what you're doing is not right, but because our egos are so strong, we cannot understand it. And the third, whatever endeavors for perfection we have, we will become ruined. Ravana was a good example of this. Ravana was so envious of Lord Ram. That's why he wanted Mother Sita. He wanted Mother Sita because, one, he was lusty. But two, even deeper than that, he wanted Mother Sita because she was with Ram. And therefore Lord Ram should not have Sita. Or if Lord Ram has Sita, I must have Sita. And that's what Srila Prabhupada says, when we pray to Lakshmi Devi, and if we don't pray to Lord Narayana, who is Lakshmi Devi's consort, then we are no different from Ravana. We want Lakshmi Devi in the house, but we don't want the injunction of worshipping Lord Narayana. You see the point? That is very dangerous. And that is what happened. All the demonic personalities behave like 332. And all the saintly personalities behave like 331. Okay? That is very important. So now we have to decide which one we want to be in. Right? Demon, Devata. Demon, Devata. The choice is ours finally. But Arjuna unflinchingly surrendered to Krishna. Wholeheartedly surrendered to Krishna. And Arjuna was never envious of Krishna. Never. If Arjuna saw Krishna doing so well, Arjuna was always happy for Krishna. Was Sudama envious of Krishna when he went to see him in Dwarka? Imagine if I was Sudama and I went to see him in Dwarka, I think I would just burn with envy. We went to the same school. We graduated the same day. Same guru, right? But you are king of Dwarka and my rooftop is leaking water and I'm a pauper. Sudama should feel extremely envious of Krishna. But he did not. He felt so happy for Krishna. Krishna, you did so well. You're Supreme Personality of Godhead. Who am I but a sinful Brahmana? And who is Krishna but Sriniketana? You see? So this is the mood. That's why Sudama understands the most confidential knowledge. That is why Arjuna understands the most confidential knowledge. And that's why it is stated, the word Anasuyave is very important here. Arjuna's qualification to receive the knowledge is because he is not envious. And therefore, Dharma Projita Kaitava Atra Paramo. What is that shloka? It's 112, right? Dharma Projita Kaitava Atra Paramo Nirmat Saranam Sadam Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayan Moolanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimva Paraishvara Satyo Hridya Varuddhate Atra Kritihi Shushrushubi Takshana. Takshana means without delay. And Dharma Projita Kaitava Atra Paramo means please reject all religions which are based on envy or fruitive activities. Any religion which is based on a material motive, reject it. Any religion which is based on envy, reject it. Because it is not really religion. If we really consider ourselves spiritual and religious, anasuyave, we must be non-envious. That is very important. Sometimes my Guru Maharaj will say, when you find fault with someone, 9 out of 10 cases you're finding fault with someone not because the person has a fault, but because actually you're envious of that person. That's why you're finding fault with them. You're just waiting to find something wrong. Why you're like that? Why this is not good? Why that is not good? You are just trying to poke them, Maharaj used to tell me, because actually you're envious of how they do something. So because you're doing something nice, you have to find some fault. This is the problem. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj said this story about Pencho. There was this boy called Pencho in Bengal, West Bengal. And he used to play naked with all the boys jumping into the water. Small children, they just jump, walk around with no clothes on. I'm sure all of us have a photo when we were young with no clothes on. It's basically standard. Either you burnt it or you kept it somewhere, or your parents will bring it up at the point when the whole world will be there. But something like that. And when Pencho grew up, he was very smart. And he became a judge at the High Court of Calcutta. Now when his neighbors heard it from some friends who visited Calcutta and saw Pencho, they were so envious because they never went beyond any certain level of education. They said, "Are you sure? I think it's a rumor. It can't be true." Then the person asked them, "Why is it not true that he can't be a judge?" "Oh, because when he was young, he was running around without any clothes." What has that got to do with you becoming judge? But they must find something, isn't it? And when the person said, "No, he really is a judge," then they said, "Maybe he's a judge, but he's not being paid enough." You have heard this before. People speak like that. They always do. When I became a lawyer, one of my uncles told my mother that what is the big deal about being a lawyer? Every dustbin you open, there's a lawyer. What is the big deal about being a lawyer? People speak like that. People speak like that. And actually, our criticisms are really on the basis of envy. That is why we criticize. A non-envious person only sees good in everyone. That is the sign of a non-envious person. And even if the non-envious person wants to tell someone something is not right, there is a culture to say it. There is a way to say it. And they say it with so much love that the person is ready to accept it. This is very important. That's why Nirmatsaranam is there. That when we take up, if you want to study, in the very beginning of Bhagavatam it is given, if you want to study and take up spiritual knowledge, please do not be envious. It is very important. Prithu Maharaj and Indra in the 4th canto, they were just fighting with each other about who will become the holder of the Ashwamedha sacrifice of a century, 100 sacrifices. The holder at that point of time of the record was Indra. And if you all remember, Prithu Maharaj was trying to get to the 100. And Indra was becoming very, very insecure. So what did he do? He disguised himself as a sannyasi. And every time the sacrificial horse was supposed to be thrown into Ashwamedha sacrifice, what did he do? He would steal it. And every time he stole it, the people would not be able to do anything to him because he was looking like sannyasi. You see? So Prithu Maharaj got so upset in the end, he decided, "I'm going to kill him." Then the Brahmanas told him, "Don't waste your time killing him. We will kill him for you." Then Brahma said, "Don't waste your time killing him. Better you chant the mantras, and Prithu, your business is not to kill someone else. Be satisfied with your 99 sacrifices. What is one more? What is the problem?" Sometimes we have this mood. I have to compete. I need to get something. So you're chanting 16 rounds, let me chant 17 rounds. In one sense it's good you're chanting 17 rounds, but if you're chanting 17 rounds because somebody has chanted 16 rounds, then you should ask yourself why you're doing it. Right? "Oh, today the turban is nice. Next week you see my turban." No, that is very dangerous. It should not be that way. So therefore, Prithu Maharaj was told by Indra, by Brahma, "Please don't do this. Stop it." And then Prithu Maharaj became satisfied. You know why? Because he submitted his envy at the lotus feet of Brahma, a spiritual authority. And he submitted that Brahma knows better than me. Let me accept that I'm envious. Let me change. And because he did that, when he did his sacrifice, Lord Vishnu himself came at the arena. Do you know that for 100 Ashwamedha sacrifices that Indra did, the Lord never appeared. But for 99 that Prithu Maharaj did, the Lord appeared. Because Prithu Maharaj gave up his envy. Anasuya way, he gave up his envy. And that is why the Lord became happy. But the story doesn't end there. The Lord came, and you know who he brought with him? He brought Indra with him. He dragged Indra to the place. Indra was very upset with Prithu. Prithu was upset with Indra. But the Lord brought them there. And after the Lord praised the fire sacrifice, Indra became very ashamed of his own activities. Why? Because he's also devotee. Actually, he's devotee. Sometimes we make mistakes, right? It's alright. He became ashamed. And he fell down before King Prithu. He fell down before him to touch his lotus feet. But when Prithu Maharaj saw Indra trying to touch his feet, he quickly held him up. And he embraced him in great ecstasy. And in 4/20/18, very important, Prithu Maharaj gave up all envy against him. He gave up all envy against him. You may be thinking, wait a minute, I thought he was angry with him. Anger is very often a symptom of envy, especially when it relates to someone you are competing with or someone that you have a problem with. Pride, envy, anger. That's the message of Bhagavatam. When we are proud of what we are envious if someone is equally good. And then we become angry with that person because they are good at something. Sometimes, you're angry with someone and you say, I'm angry with him because of something. But actually, it's a situation of headache, stomach ache. You say, actually, I have headache. But when you drill down, actually, you have a stomach ache. But you're saying you have a headache. So actually now, Prithu Maharaj gave up his envy against Indra. And if you look at the purport, Prabhupada writes a very nice point. It's somewhere in the middle. It starts with both King Indra and Maharaj Prithu. Do you see it there? Prabhu, is it there? Okay. Both King Indra and Maharaj Prithu were envious and angry with each other. That's a startling point, isn't it? But Prabhupada makes it clear. They were both angry and envious with each other. But since both of them were Vaishnavas or servants of Lord Vishnu, it was their duty to adjust the cause of their envy. Amazing statement. Amazing statement. And what does Prabhupada say after that? This is also first-class example of cooperative behavior between Vaishnavas. But in present days, because people are not Vaishnavas, they fight perpetually among one another and are vanquished without finishing the mission of human life. And that's why we must propagate Krishna consciousness movement. Because Prabhupada says, even though people sometimes become angry and malicious towards one another, because of their being Krishna conscious, such rivalry, competition, and envy can be adjusted without difficulty. This is how we have to live with each other. This is the royal road to adjust our envy. We must understand the cause of our envy. And the cause of our envy is because we cannot accept authority. Very difficult for us to accept authority. And we don't want to submit to authority. Arjuna crossed this because he accepted Krishna, his friend, as someone much higher than us. That's why whenever you're sitting next to your friends, and you're all sitting next to friends, I hope nobody's sitting with your enemies, right? You're not saying, okay, today you know what to do. I ended up sitting with her or him. Just tolerate now. We shouldn't think that way. I assume you're all sitting with friends. Always remember, even though you may see the person next to you as your friend, never forget that they are more advanced than you. And always be prepared that if you are in difficulty, they are someone you can turn to for guidance. Have that faith. If you have that faith, Krishna will give them the intelligence to guide you. He will give them the intelligence to guide you. But if you think they're useless, then you are befooled, you are ruined in your endeavors for perfection. Because you don't know how to be non-envious of your friends. You see the point? That's very important. And you know something? In 3:32:19 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, no, 390 is Bhagavatam, sorry. In Bhagavatam. I'm speaking how come Bhagavad Gita has so many chapters. In Srimad Bhagavatam, what does Kapila Dev say? Kapila Dev, spoke the great Samkhya philosophy, which is pure devotional service actually. And what does he say here? After speaking so much on Samkhya, he tells his mother, this instruction, mother, is not meant for the envious. It's not meant for the agnostics. It's not meant for people who are unclean in their behavior. Nor is it meant for hypocrites or for persons who are proud of material possessions. Isn't it very clear? These are all the things we should not be. And these are the reasons why we cannot accept this confidential knowledge. So do you see how practical Bhagavatam is? It's speaking all about our behavior. Then look at 40, 3:32-40. He doesn't stop there. He says it is not to be instructed to persons who are too greedy. That means if you're greedy, it's alright. Too greedy is too much, right? Or too attached to family life. You can be attached to family, right? But not too attached to family. Or to persons who are non-devotees. And again, second envy. Or to those who are envious of the devotees and Krishna. You see, this is very important. And why is this so? Because envy will stop us from understanding Guyattamam. Guyattamam. This is how we enter into the real secret of transcendental knowledge. Give up envy, please. Very important. And the conclusion to this verse is what Prabhupada says about hearing. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that Arjuna heard Krishna, and therefore hearing is very important. And hearing is the first engagement. First is H, hearing, and second is engagement. And do you know that engagement in Krishna consciousness is how we apply devotional service? Very important. Kapila Dev says this in 3:32-23. Easy to remember. 32-23. Right? My Guru Maharaj loved this verse. He said this verse explains devotional service so nicely. Right? And the verse is very interesting because if you look at the verse, it's identical almost to the verse that we know. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Yad Brahma Darshanam. Only last line is different. But what does Kapila Dev say? We can read it together. Engagement in Krishna consciousness and application of devotional service unto Krishna make it possible to advance in knowledge and in detachment as well as in self-realization. This is very important. This is the formula actually. What must we do? Be engaged in Krishna consciousness. When you engage yourself in Krishna consciousness, you can apply bhakti. They come together. Just like thunder and lightning occur almost simultaneously. Engagement, application. Application is vijnanam. You see the point? Application is vijnanam. Engagement is also vijnanam. Therefore, engagement and application are mirrors. They mirror each other always. If you engage, you apply. If you apply, you engage. You engage, you apply, you apply, you engage. And it makes it possible to what? Advance in knowledge and detachment. It comes naturally. We don't have to unnaturally detach ourselves. This is very important. This is very important. And the best person who actually did this is Ambarish Maharaj. When we want to conclude now, we remember Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish Maharaj utilized his entire day. Savai Manaha. Do you remember that verse, isn't it? Savai Mana, Krishna Padaravindo. That whole list of the way he lived is so important. In the morning, the moment he started his day, Ambarish Maharaj engaged his mind in Krishna consciousness. He engaged his hands, his limbs in Krishna consciousness. He engaged his ears to hear about Krishna. He engaged his nose to smell the flowers and aroma of tulsi leaves. He engaged his tongue to chant and to taste. He engaged his legs to walk to temple. He engaged his hands to clean the temple. He engaged his head to bow before the Lord. This is how engagement in devotional service is application of devotional service. You see the point? This is Guyat Tamam. And the beauty is, because he was like that, what is really, really important is that he was tested by Durvasa. Durvasa Muni was envy personified. Because when he came and saw Amrish Maharaj, he was fasting. He was just about to break his fast. And at that point, Durvasa came. And Durvasa said, let me take a bath and come back. And when he came back and he had broken fast with just a little bit of water, he became very angry with him. He was angry with him because he was envious of the king. He could not understand how such a great king, could be, how he was such a great king. And therefore he became angry. And he decided to curse him. And he took out this great beam, right, from his hair. And he threatened to kill and vanquish Amrish Maharaj, except that Sudarshan Chakra was there, permanently 24/7, giving security to Amrish Maharaj. If you want security, this is the best security you get. Right? Amrish Maharaj had the best security. And best part is, Bhagavatam says, Amrish Maharaj never asked for Sudarshan Chakra to be there. But Krishna gave him Sudarshan Chakra because he was so pure as a devotee. Now when Sudarshan Chakra came, before it started coming, it first of all killed the being. And then it started going after Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni was forced to go on yatra. This is forced yatra, huh? Not the yatra where you say, let me go now and listen to Maharaj. No. This is forced yatra. And in this yatra, he had to run all the time. Because Sudarshan Chakra was chasing him. So who did he go to? He went to Brahma first, isn't it? And he thought Brahma will help him. But Brahma said, I'm sorry, Sudarshan Chakra is a little bit out of my league. I think you go now. And he went to Kailash and he saw Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva said, I'm supposed to be taking care of annihilation, but Sudarshan Chakra will annihilate me. So I'm not going to get involved in this. You go to Lord Vishnu. So he went all the way to Vaikuntha. Can you imagine? Right to the gates of Vaikuntha, and from there he stood and he spoke to the Lord. And the Lord gave him a good scolding in a nice way. Right? He told him that actually you've made a big mistake. For those whom you want to harm, that harm comes back to you. And the greatest harm we harm people with is when we're envious of them. When we don't mean them well, that is envy. It will come back to us, Prabhus and Matajis. Because those whom we are envious of, you know one thing? They sleep very well at night. And you can't sleep. We can't sleep because we're thinking of them. How dare they have this car, there's so much money, and they're doing so well. But they are sleeping. They don't care. They are very happy. You see? So therefore, Durvasa Muni was taught that. And then Vishnu told him, I'm sorry, I can't control Sudarshan Chakra. I've got news for you. I've actually given that control to Amrish. So now he went all the way back. Foolish, isn't it? All he should have done was to fall at Amrish Maharaj's feet. But then we won't have this nice episode, isn't it? So therefore, always remember, when you have offended a devotee out of envy, don't stand in front of Krishna and beg for forgiveness. Krishna will tell you, go to the devotee and beg for forgiveness. That's what this whole story is about. That's what the pastime is. Going to Vishnu is not good enough. Face the person you are envious of and ask an apology from them. Don't stand before Krishna. Krishna, I've offended all these devotees, now please forgive me. You know that you should be falling at their feet, but you don't. How can transcendental knowledge be revealed to you? It cannot. So he went back and fell at the feet of Amrish Maharaj. But Amrish Maharaj became embarrassed that he fell at the feet. The same way, Prithu Maharaj became embarrassed. And Amrish Maharaj picked him up and started praying to Sudarshan Chakra. And he said, Sudarshan Chakra, if you think I am of any value, please go away. And Sudarshan Chakra went away. And at that point of time, we end with this beautiful point. This point is so nice. 9:5:14 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Durvasa Muni says something really nice. He says, my dear king, today I have experienced the greatness of devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For although I committed an offense, you prayed for my good fortune. Do you see the difference between devotee and non-devotee? A non-devotee never prays well for someone. A non-devotee could be envious, mean unwell, but a devotee never means unwell. And that is why the door of the spiritual kingdom is open to such a devotee. They are always well-wishers of everyone. Even those who harass them, even those who have caused them trouble, they are always praying for good fortune. Then look at 17 of this part, very important. In 17 he says so nicely, O king, overlooking my offenses, you have saved my life. This is how we must approach Bhagavad Gita. Without envy. Overlook other people's faults. Overlook difficulties in your life. Overlook reverses. You can either look or you can overlook. Right? You can look or you can overlook. How nice this word is, overlook. And therefore I'm very obliged to you because you're very, very merciful. Very merciful. See this point, how nicely it is. And therefore, this is how we should be. So therefore, be in the company and association of devotees. Like-minded devotees. It is stated in Bhagavatam, like-minded devotees means swajati. Swajati means we are of common heritage. Not we are of common caste. We have the same belief that we want to serve Krishna. We are the family. And in this family, what should we do? We should help each other to remember Krishna. In the association of devotees, hearing about Krishna is very important, Prabhupada said. And therefore, when we are in the association of each other, hearing about Krishna is very powerful. Narada heard about Krishna in the association of Bhakti Vedantas. Right? In their association, how he grew. See? Parikshit Maharaj heard Shukdev Goswami in the association of all the assembled devotees. Suta Goswami, right, spoke about Bhagavatam in the assembled devotees in Naimisharanya. You see? So, in the assembly of devotees, hearing about Krishna is very important. Very important. So, that's why we are here today. We are so fortunate by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, by Srimad Bhagavatam's mercy, we are able to actually be given a chance to hear about this most confidential knowledge. And now let us spend the next few months hearing about chapter 9 and imbibing it and practicing it. Then it will become Vijnana. Otherwise, it remains as Jnana. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Gurudev ki. Nitai Gaura Prema. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Is there any question? Are there any comments? I think I can take one or two. Is there a mic? Okay. There is a mic. Gautami Prabhu, you look before you put up your hand like you wanted to ask something. I look forward. Yes, Prabhu. Oh, Ram Chaitanya Prabhu, yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhuji, in the first canto, third chapter, we see the reason mentioned for Lord Buddha's appearance as Surat Sammohayam, Surat Dusham. Those who are envious of devotees to bewilder them. But when we see the activities of those people that Srimad Bhagavatam mentions scientifically about the sacrifices of the animals based on the Vedas. So how do we understand that the root cause of that particular activity for which Lord Buddha appeared was actually envy towards Lord's devotees?
Okay. You are saying that this is stated in Shastras that actually he appeared to counteract or to stop and to vanquish the envy that people feel towards devotees, right? The emphasis of the envy that the population was feeling towards the Lord and his devotees was exhibited in their violence and their violent conduct towards animals too. Because their behavior towards the animals was a symptom of their envy. Just like the beating of the cow and the bull by Kali in the first canto was a symptom of Kali's envy of the Lord also. So therefore, it was a very external symptom, but when we have external symptom on a gross level, it is more easily discernible. But the real challenge is when we cannot see the envy externally, but it is existing in our hearts. So that is how the symptom was manifested. That by meat eating, by killing animals, by exhibiting violence, we are actually committing great sin to human life. And we are also envious of the animal's position to live and the right not to be killed. And we are taking that away. So the material idea of envy and the spiritual idea of envy is very different. And that's why I think you've nicely captured that in your question. Is that helpful, Prabhu? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for wonderful talk. So you were mentioning about the Bhagavad verses 331 and 332.
Yes.
So personally, Prabhu, when I read Bhagavad Gita, I find the verse 333 the most dangerous verse for me.
According to the nature,
Specifically about, Nigraha Kamshim Marishati, like what can depression accomplish?
yes,
Every man acts according to his own nature.
yes,
So what is the purpose of depressing, your feelings, your desires, or
yes,
activities?
yes.
It's like the Nike slogan, just do it.
And how does Prabhupada explain it in the purport? Maybe that will help us. Because Prabhupada actually understands this argument very well. And in 333, he says this point. Therefore, without being fully in Krishna consciousness, one should not give up his occupational duties. No one should suddenly give up his prescribed duties and become a so-called yogi or transcendentalist artificially. It is better to be situated in one's position and to try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. Thus one may be freed from the clutches of Krishna's mind. So if someone were to tell us, oh, this means that we don't have to repress my nature. If I'm demonic by nature, why should I repress it? It's my nature. Let it flow. But we will explain to them that we all have our natures. Repressing a demonic nature doesn't make you more divine. If you just remain demonic, right, and you don't repress it, the alternative to repression is engagement and understanding what your true nature is. So instead of artificially repressing it, we seek to change your nature with transcendental knowledge. With transcendental knowledge, instead of artificially repressing it, you come to understand that you are not this body. You come to understand that your urges don't help you, that they are temporary. Then instead of repressing them under ignorance, you repress them, or you don't repress them, you control them with transcendental knowledge. That is how we should explain this verse to people. Then they will understand, oh, my understanding of that is completely different from what Sastra is saying. And that is what Sastra is telling us. You see, you artificially try to stop meat eating. And you say, I'll just stop meat eating. But you don't chant, you don't read, you don't study, you're just a vegetarian. Right? Prabhupada said even a pigeon can be a vegetarian. What is the great thing about being a vegetarian? But if you understand why, we should not harm lower beings, lower forces of life, lower levels of consciousness, to cultivate mercy, to cultivate compassion, then it becomes more valuable and you become more motivated not to take meat. Because you understand that your reason is grounded in knowledge. That helps many people. Practically, it helps many people. You know what I mean? Like, for example, I want to light a lamp for Damodar. And I don't know why I'm lighting it, right? So I repress all my feelings and just do it because I have to do it anyway. But if someone tells me why I'm doing it, I won't repress or I won't feel like I'm just doing it. I will learn to appreciate what I'm doing. So it's it's deeper actually than just repression from what a materialist thinks of. It's about changing the consciousness. Not artificially, but with transcendental knowledge. Does that help?
One way is about developing higher place.
Exactly. It is about developing higher place. Because otherwise you cannot control it. If you give them sweets and you don't give them something better than sweets, we'll just keep eating our sweets. When you give something sweeter than sweets, then you take it. You will take it. Like now we all have Kirtan, right? Now if we replace Kirtan with the music that's going on in our neighbors, we won't like it now. Because we have tasted something very high. Very high. And if you bring some of our neighbors here and get them to come every Saturday for about 2-3 months, chances are they will want to be here. Because they have gotten a higher taste. So you're right, absolutely. Thank you, Prabhu. Very good point. Anyone else? One last. All good? Thank you very much, Prabhu and Mataji, for your time. 2 things. Today is Ekadeshi. So it's a very, very important day, and I'm so happy to see so many devotees. Correct, right? Am I right? It's a family sponsorship. Okay. And her family are all here. I can see them, right? Her brothers, her sisters, they're all here. This is in memory of her mother, right? Of their mother, who passed on earlier this year. Was it this year, Martin? Earlier, right? This year, yeah. Yeah, if you recall. Time flies. And therefore, right, this is the best way for us to remember our loved ones. By feeding the devotees, by hearing about Krishna, and by changing our lives. If we really want, right, to serve our parents, the best thing we can do is to become Krishna conscious. By becoming Krishna conscious, we will serve them so well that when they leave this world, they will not have to come back to this world. One pure devotee can liberate generations of families. That's the greatness of devotional service. So a warm welcome to the family, to all of you who have come. Thank you very much for coming. Yeah, I think a lot of Haribol will be good. And I also want to welcome a devotee who's come all the way from Pune. Her name is Sharada Mataji. She's sitting there, right? You don't have to stand, Mataji, you can sit. She has come. Yes, her husband, her son is here. Yeah, I just saw son, daughter-in-law, and the family are here. She just walked in. It was difficult for her to climb the stairs, but despite all the difficulty, she's here today to hear Bhagavatam, to hear